Reframe community, what's going on? Jordan here. We're doing something a little bit different this year as we enter into WLD, Whole Life Discipleship Volume 1. If you've used our content before, you would know that we do something called audio insights traditionally. And what we would do is every series, we would create a quick audio clip that would just kind of explain, hey, here's how you should think about this series. Here's why. Here's what your volunteers should know. Here's what parents should know. Here's what you should expect. And kind of just pray for you because we want you to have as much context as possible. This year, we got writers involved, which I'm super excited about. And so what we wanted to do is record those videos with the writers. And so I got none other here than my brother, Joe Valenzuela, here with me. Pastor Joe. Pastor Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, bro. It's good to see you. And we collaborated on the Love and Logic series this year. And so super excited to dive into that. Obviously, as you guys know, young people are all about relationships. And as soon as they transition into that junior high to high school, depending on how quickly they develop, right, they get interested in romantic relationships. And obviously, it's something we have to address. I mean, we can kind of hide if we want to, but that seems like to be a really terrible idea. Yep. And so, Pastor Joe, you've been in youth ministry for 17 years. You're a vet.
Actually, 25. Hit 25 what? This year.
Oh, okay. So it was 17 when I met you. That's what it is.
17 when you met me.
25 years, bro.
I'm the last of the Gen Xers.
Youth ministry veteran. So you got that wisdom and that experience to give us. And so I'm super excited that you wrote this series. But what I wanted to get into is like the presupposition, because as I was kind of working through the content, it kind of felt to me like you have to assume with the content, you go in with the idea that you understand fundamentally that young people are going to get into relationships and there is nothing you can do about it.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's the way that God designed us. We are biologically, mentally, emotionally built to connect to another person. And so when puberty hits, all those chemicals, which, if we put all this information into these lessons, it would, these things would be books. But we're built biologically. And so to try to kind of stopgap that is really kind of going against the way God designed us on some level. But what young people need, as with everything in their life, is someone to walk them through when they hit certain stages, no matter if it's taking their first steps. And I mean, no one, it's biologically part of our development for a kid to start wanting to walk, but we just don't walk back and be like, good luck, or we knock out the legs out from underneath them. No, we take them by the hand and we go one foot, left, right foot, left foot, and we carry along. But somewhere along the ways as teenagers, we stopped doing that.
I think it's, as I think about it, I think it's because we kind of, if we're honest, maybe fear the conversation a little bit. Like we know the hypersexualization that exists in our culture, right? And so, and I think it's also challenging for youth pastors, youth leaders, youth workers to navigate because it's like, okay, what are the parents saying on this, right?
Exactly.
Are they saying anything? You know what I mean? And then like, where's the student at on this? Are they promiscuous? Are they not? What have they been introduced to? What have they not been introduced to? And so like you've been in this game for a long time. Like how have you kind of navigated those types of situations? Because it varies all over the place, right? And then you got all these kids coming together to your youth group. And now you're talking about relationships, sex, dating. And you're like, what do I do?
Oh yeah, no, navigating it is you just have to realize you're playing in the gray. You're stepping into the muck and you're helping them with it. But it is so necessary. It is no different than what Christ did with us. He stepped into the muck with us down here on this planet, so that way we could know him. This is no different on some level where we're having to step into the muck. And yeah, there's mistakes I made along the way. I had to learn some lessons the hard way. Sometimes I thought a parent would go one way and they went the opposite. But ultimately, helping these students through this dating lifestyle, which does take a lot more work. You got to know the parents, you got to know the student, you got to know where they're at. You also got to be ready for, those conversations when they go sideways, or,
Mm,
and yeah, you're going to be stepping into a lot of ethical issues of like, okay, do I tell mom and dad what I was just told, or do I keep those lines of communication open? And yeah, it's going to take a lot of prayer, and it's going to take a lot of work. And it is easier just to kind of, to pick on someone from my past, kiss dating goodbye, and then just wash your hands of it. But we found out that just completely just did not work at all.
yep. It
And
did not.
so when I approached it, yeah, I kind of had to stumble through it, and that's just normal. But at the end, now, like I said, being 25 years later, here's the benefit and the fruit. Most of our married couples were in our youth group,
That's
and they
dope.
are wonderful parents who are raising some godly children. No one's perfect, of course, but we're seeing healthy marriages, and being able to walk with them from junior high on up, um, was the benefit. And so, yeah, you may not see fruit right off the bat, but it's going to be a benefit, and it's going to be a benefit for them because they don't have any of that emotional baggage, because they do want help,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. That's good.
it is what it is. So,
Yeah, for sure.
you got to step in the muck and mire to deal with all this. So,
That's good. Thank you. So, in your lessons,
yes,
lesson one is to find the one. You got to be the one. Talk to me about that
yes.
a little bit.
So, in that particular lesson, one of the mistakes that we have always made, and we do this as adults, I bet some of you watching this, this might click a light bulb. It did for me. We think that to be complete, I have to be with someone. And if you think about our
Mm,
teenagers, they're getting that all the time. They
yep.
got to either be sexually active, they either got to have romance, all their music, their movies, their YouTube videos, the streaming platforms, everything
Yep.
is pointing them towards romance. Even gamers, you know,
Mm.
there's
Yeah, it's
romance on
crazy,
games.
bro.
Something as
It's
simple as
crazy.
a Nintendo game. There's a romantic piece. So they're
Mm,
inundated with this, but we never forget that we think if I find the one, then I'll be complete. And we never stop to think, well, am I the one that someone wants to find?
mm.
Am I showing the fruits of the Spirit? Am I following Christ? Am I a good person? Am I
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
dateable?
yeah, yeah. That's good.
So,
That's good.
so
That's good.
if we could help students start there, they
Mm-hmm.
may even naturally realize, wait, maybe it's not time to date, which is
That's
not
good.
a bad thing.
I agree
And for some students,
wholeheartedly.
they may be ready.
Yeah, and that's the challenging part too, right? Like the reality is,
Hmm.
I think we just assume that kids aren't ready to date, right? But
Yes.
what if they are? And then even more complicated, what if their parents are cool with it, right?
Oh,
So now
yeah.
it's like if they got the sign off, your responsibility on some level has to become, okay, let me help them navigate this, even if I don't agree, and even if I think that this
Hmm.
isn't in their best interest right now. Let me help them navigate this with wisdom, with guidance. And I think like if you do that, I almost feel like you can win them over in ways that you couldn't if you went the opposite way, which was to just say, hey, you're not ready to do it, and here's all the reasons why. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And you kind of are alluding to a piece with this timing part, is that it's that communication piece.
Mm,
A teenager doesn't understand space time or time frame to begin with. For
yep.
them, you tell a teenager you're grounded for a week, they feel like they got sentenced to a 5 year, you know, you know,
Jail
spot
term.
in the pen. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, they're just like, oh my gosh. So they don't get timing in a lot of ways, or they don't really know how to connect, a person that they just met with all the feelings that they're feeling. And so if lines of communication are open, then those of us who are, seasoned and been there, done that, and bought the t-shirt, we can walk alongside them, but they're not going to listen to us unless they know that we're helping them figure it out, not just telling them what to do and
That's
helping them
good.
think through it. And so that word timing is twofold. A, are you in a place where you can actually are ready to date?
Yep.
And B, you may not find your girlfriend or boyfriend in junior high. You may not find it in high school. You may be well into college before this ever took place. That if I was able to go back and talk to seventh grade Joe, I would
Mm,
have told him, dude, chill out.
yeah.
Just chill
Facts.
out, okay?
Yep.
You're
Yep.
going to have this beautiful girl come when you're 23. Chill out. go wrestle, go play football. Don't worry about anything else right now.
Hmm.
I wish I could tell him that, and I think I would have been a healthier person
That's good.
if I was able to listen. So helping kids understand that timing's everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's conversation two or lesson two. I like conversation because we like to have conversations around
Yeah,
here. Obviously, the lessons conversations are full of questions, so it's more of a dialogue than
absolutely.
you just teaching preaching. But I think about this as you're talking. I think one of the things we're guilty of as a Christian community is kind of implicitly and explicitly communicating that you like once you become a Christian and you get plugged into the church or you get plugged into Christian community, like at some point you have to get married.
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah,
almost like the thing, right? And it's like, no, the thing is Jesus. Whether you're single, whether you're married,
exactly.
whether you're widowed, whether you're divorced, like whatever your relationship status is, the thing, the main thing is Jesus. And so that has to be heralded above all else. And I think what will come through in this series is that like the main thing is Jesus. Like no matter where you find
Absolutely.
yourself.
Absolutely. You have to trust Jesus. I mean, he's the God of space time. He knows when the right time is. So if you trust
Mm,
him, you can navigate that. So yeah, absolutely.
that's good. So conversation three, expectations.
Yes.
Hmm. Tell us a little about that. A little bit about that.
So I do premarital counseling along with side with my wife, and one of the first lessons we come into is expectations. Everyone has expectations. I don't care if you're in seventh grade, sixth, seventh grade, wanting a boyfriend or girlfriend, or you are 27 looking at getting married. You're approaching a relationship with some sort of expectations. Now they could be, legitimate or they could be irrational, you
Mm,
know. So helping a student to understand what their expectations are, is very key because they don't know what they don't know. That they're wondering why, so and so is not uh, being a certain way in their relationship. You may
mm-hmm,
have a young girl who's
mm-hmm.
thinking the boy needs to text her every single night, and she's mad that he's not saying good night. Well, honey, he's in seventh grade. A, parents may have taken his phone at 9, and B, he's in seventh grade. He's not going to think of things like that. So you might have an unreasonable expectation in a relationship. And I know that's a silly example, but you can go the full spectrum. And so helping students understand, well, what is it that you want in a boyfriend or girlfriend? Do you want someone who's more sports or art space,
Mm.
or what is appropriate, not just in terms of what you like in terms of type, but what you expect when you are in a relationship. And it's also that piece is, are you ready to even fulfill someone else's expectations?
Yeah.
you know
The whole time that's kind of like in the background, right? Like as you're going through
yeah,
these lessons, it's really creating this framework to say, well, yeah, this is what I want. But it also makes you feel the weight of what it is you're actually asking for, right? Because I think, like you're
exactly.
saying, a lot of times kids haven't processed through this. And I can say this as a licensed professional, right, in the behavioral health space. I'm having grown conversations with married adults that haven't communicated their expectations to one another, and they're having issues in their marriage because they can't just be honest about what it is that they want. And so, if adults can't do it, you think
Yeah.
a junior high or a high school is going to do it? There's not a chance. And
No,
so,
no, just go ahead.
no, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just say, just simply getting them to list it out and think about it gives them a
Mm-hmm.
chance to look at it and go, oh, number 4 is unrealistic.
Yep.
Oh, wait, number 3, maybe I need to develop that a little more because it is good. And so
Yep.
again, it's a chance for youth leaders and parents and youth workers to walk alongside a kid, and now they're building a very healthy expectation list, which will now be the filter where they can now start seeing a potential mate,
Yep.
which whether
And
it's in high school or not.
I think here's the thing too, like even to go to the side where it's like, okay, because you're gonna have kids who like, okay, maybe they come from like families that are kind of teaching them some values in this regard, but you're also gonna have kids that like aren't getting taught this stuff at all and it's free game, right? And they're just doing
Mhm.
whatever they want. I think in that case too, giving them the opportunity to kind of sit down and really think through what they expect and think into the future a little bit, which obviously we talk about in the series. Like these kids are not thinking about how the decisions they're making right now are going to affect them in their college years or in their years post college. They're just making decisions based on
Right
emotion,
now.
based on
Yeah.
hormones, based on like pain that they might be experiencing in their family, not getting affirmation from dad. So I'm going to go do X, Y, and Z, or whatever it is my family's
Mhm.
going through a difficult time right now. Maybe my parents aren't together. Maybe my parents never were together. Like all those different types of dynamics, like contribute to how they view romantic relationships in their life and what problem it's going to solve, right? And so this might actually help them as they really think it through. Okay, what do I really want in somebody? Okay, I want somebody who is going to be there for me, love me, care for me. It might help them rethink, well, okay, if I expect this in a partner, should I be wilding out right now and doing all this stuff
Yep.
that is going to affect me in ways that's going to make it more difficult for me to be with that type of person? It might make them think twice about the decisions that they're making right now, which then transitions us into conversation 4, which is love versus lust. So tell us
Yes.
a little bit about that one.
So love versus lust, again, we're biological creatures, and we got to understand too that historically, any other time in history, if you are a high school youth pastor, about half your girls would have been on their second child by now. Some of those young men would have been in their profession, if not heading out to war. We forget that
Mm,
even in World War II, we had 16-year-olds who lied about their age and died on the beaches of Normandy. So just kind of consider that for a moment, that we used to marry off kids, I shouldn't say kids, teens, roughly around those ages. And it's
yep.
only in our culture that we've extended that. So, but biology's still the same. A 16-year-old 3,000 years ago, body is still a teenager today in terms of
Mm-hmm.
function. So all those chemical processes, that development, which is God design, is coming up into a kid. And with hormones hitting the brain, we need to realize that our students are going through these things, and they need help to help
Yep.
think it through. And they're going to be emotional and whatever. And so love and lust helps them to figure out, okay, are you truly in love or are you in lust? I think I say in there that teenagers mess up for one of two reasons.
Yep.
They're either in lust, which is mostly the case, but you know what? Them also truly also being in love could also be a factor. And
Mm,
so, but we like to throw it all into one area. But regardless, we need to help them think through it. And
that's
so
good.
this is opening up those conversations, helping hopefully get parents involved, youth leaders involved, because here's the reality. The teens are going to talk about it with someone. Are they going to be the blind leading the blind and talk about it with their friends, which is 9 times out of 10?
Mm-hmm.
Or can we create a safe space for them to be able to work out those things with leaders? And lesson 4 is what really is going to help you do that. And we can't always be around. So if they also can build this biblical mindset,
Mm,
then maybe they can run through the filter themselves when they are in the moment, because we're not going to be with them when they're in a backseat of a car. We're not going to be with
it's
them,
true.
behind the bleachers at the school.
Yeah.
You
No,
know.
that's good, bro. I mean, I think like even as I read that, it was challenging for me, like just going through that content and thinking about it, even in the context of my like I'm serving in a youth group back here now, and so it's like, dang, like thinking about that, like you're right, like historically, like
Mm-hmm.
if we just keep it a stack, like people got married way younger than they do now, and
Mm-hmm.
they were in relationships, and so we see it as weird as Westerners because we've
Yep.
like widened adolescence, right? And so now you're an adolescent until you're in your mid 20s when 100 200 years ago you're 12 and you're out there working, you know what I
Yep.
mean? And so like that's changed some things because once again I think what that shows is like even though we're developing biologically, we're not as mature emotionally and mentally because we
Yep.
haven't been prepared the same way we were 100 200 years ago to transition into real life, right? And so I think that's really important to take into consideration when you're dealing with these kids. And then just the idea that like what if a kid actually is in love?
Oh
Like
yeah.
there are those teenagers that are incredibly mature, reasonable, like for whatever reason, whether it be they had to grow up really quickly or like maybe they're just that type of person. They were raised around older souls that kind of
Yep.
so they kind of developed faster than normal teenagers do in terms of mental and emotional capacity, right? Which is possible, and so they're experiencing something which is the exception, but it's
Mm-hmm.
actually real. And so, no, that's good, man. I think
And even they need people to walk around them. Over my 25 years, I've only had 2 couples who started dating in junior high and who are now married today.
wow.
But yeah, so you got to imagine by the time they're junior senior, those romantic feelings, they're in love. And if it wasn't for the fact that the parents were actually very good, involved parents and they could freely talk, they now entered into a marriage where it was pure and good, you know. But yeah, statistically, out of 25 years, I've only had two couples, you know.
Yeah. So that, yeah, it's definitely the exception.
Yep.
And then conversation 5 was goals and
Yep.
growth. Tell me a little bit about
Absolutely.
that.
This is where teenagers really this is where everything kind of hits the ceiling for teenagers. So goals and growth is trying to prepare them to start thinking post high school. If you've had a high school sweetheart, what's going to happen when it's college time? Now, it's just is how our culture is. Teenagers, again, they only think in the moment, which on some level there's a beauty in that. But there's going to come a day where is this relationship going to last
Mm,
college?
mm,
If one person gets a full ride scholarship all the way to the East Coast, if you live on the West Coast, is that going to last? Is that your goal? Is the goals that you have in life, are they in line with your romantic partner's goals? Because
mm,
if it's not, you may need to be careful how deep you want to get into this relationship, be it physical, emotional, you know, spiritual, even spiritual, you know. You want to be able to kind of be aware of that. That is bringing the logic into of, am I even set up to succeed in this relationship? And there's
mm.
that piece to it, and then there's another piece of to it of, are you creating goals together? Because if you're thinking like, yeah, we're going to get married, well, then what's your goals together? Are you willing to work while your spouse is getting their degree and then swap? They need
Mm.
to think through that. You need to help teenagers to think further in the future. We do a good
Yep.
job about having them do it academically, but we do a
Hmm.
really horrible job helping them to do it emotionally, mentally, and spiritually in a lot of
That's good.
ways.
That's good. Yeah, it's really good. I think about once again, and that's the thing I think we're even trying to get at with the whole life discipleship concept
Hmm.
and just how we engage young people in general. Like we need to create space for them to feel the weight of what it means to be a
Yes.
human, to feel the weight of what it means to follow Jesus, to feel the weight of what it means to do the things that they're saying they want to do. Like we don't need to shield them from that. We need to create
Hmm.
environments where they can experience it that are controlled so that we can walk with them as they figure out how to carry that weight. And so essentially what we're doing in this series is just that, like, okay, let's engage these hard conversations.
Yep.
Let's talk about what it really means to be in a relationship. Cool. And like here's what it means. Are you sure you're ready for this? Have you really thought this through? And like you're saying, there might be one or two over the
That might make
course
it.
of several years that like yeah they are actually ready for it, and hopefully what it'll do for the rest of them is give them a framework to understand like, okay, I'm really not ready for this even though this is what I want. And so they're going to
Yep.
know in the back of their mind while they're engaging in all this stuff, like if that's what they decide to do, like, hey, I'm participating in this stuff, but really I'm just doing it because it's self-centered and it's just what I want, and it's not really in
Exactly.
anybody's best interest. It's not in my best interest. It's not in the best interest of the person that I'm with. It's not in the best interest of my future. It's just me being a teenager. And so I think
And this is
giving
where
them that
breakups are going to
information is going to
happen.
help them.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
in
go
this
ahead.
lesson. Sorry, it's in this lessons that breakups are going to happen. So be ready for that.
Okay. So you've seen that when you go through this and kids get it, they actually
Hmm.
like respond by breaking up with people they're in relationship with if they realize that it's not in their best interest,
Exactly. Which is
or
a
it's
healthy thing.
yeah,
It's like
that's good.
it's like cutting off a dead limb, you know, or
Hmm.
gangrene. It's actually
Hmm.
going to be healthy in the long run. It's going to hurt at first. It's going to suck. It will cause drama in your youth group, but in the long run, you'll have a healthier student. You're going to have a healthier youth group.
That's good. And that student ultimately is going to be grateful to you. They're going to come back to you
Hmm.
later and be like, "Yo, I'm so grateful that you taught on this because it helped me understand things that I didn't understand at the time."
Yep.
That's good. So what would you say to volunteers? So if a volunteer was listening to this, like what advice would you give them in terms of how they should engage during the course of the series? Maybe they're leading small groups, having sidebar conversations. You know, kids trust sometimes the volunteers more than the main youth leader who
Hmm.
might be communicating. So what would you say to volunteers?
I would listen and validate feelings. And what I mean
Okay.
by that is don't listen, validate feelings, and then pick and choose your battles. Because if, you know, sometimes, and I made this mistake a lot when I was a youth leader and early in my youth pastor, kid number one, we would present Question. Kid number one says something that is completely biblically off, completely horrifying. And so what do? I jump on it right away. And well, what did that just teach all the other kids?
Not to be honest.
Yeah. Don't be honest and keep your mouth shut.
Yep.
So give a safe environment for everyone to talk, even though inside you're screaming, and then pick it. Yeah, you're like, this is horrifying. Let them feel safe in saying it, and then give yourself a chance to, through prayer, to saying, okay, Lord, which one should I address?
That's good.
And so just take a calm approach. Do realize when you talk about relationships, you're going to hear the most horrifying perspectives, things that are off. The kid that you thought was the most biblically minded probably has the most worldly, relationship thinking, and it's going to be a struggle. But just take a deep breath, validate feelings. It's like, yeah, I see that upsets you. Yeah, I see that you're really in love. Whatever. And then pick and choose your battle. So that way you create an environment for them to talk. And yeah, you're going to you'll know when you need to bring a parent into the mix, and when you can kind of, keep confidentiality. So it's an art and science. So that would be my advice.
That's good. And then last thing I want to ask you is, where do you see, or how do you see the gospel being weaved and fitted throughout this like series? And like, how would you encourage a youth pastor, youth leader, or whoever's communicating the series to communicate the gospel throughout it?
Well, the gospel is all throughout it. So you look for those moments that actually are connected. You want to look at the fact that, like in expectations, Jesus himself says, if you love me, you will do what I commanded. So you can bring out that in every relationship, these things are in the gospel. Christ himself, knew the right time to come and save us from our sins. Yeah, there is always an expectation piece. And what was his goal for us? Go into all the world and preach the gospel. There is connections that you can make, because ultimately relationships is a reflection of the gospel. There's a reason why God refers to the church as a bride.
Mm.
So all these different things have a parallel gospel message to it. And, I'm not going to insult your intelligence on this video. It's all in the lessons where you can make those connections. But I only scratched the surface in these lessons. There is so much more, So that's how I would weave the gospel, is to recognize and seeing the parallels of God's relationship with us.
That's good. Pastor Joe, I appreciate you. I'm grateful for you. Grateful for the work that you've done and how long you've done it. And my hope is this will be a blessing to the users, the youth leaders out there that are going to use this content this year. Yeah. So would you pray for them and their ministries as they do that work? And we'll close.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Jordan, I thank you for putting all this on. This is so vital. I wish I had this 25 years ago. So let us pray.
God, I appreciate that. Yep.
Anytime. Let us pray. Lord, we come before you in prayer, Lord. And Lord, I just pray for these youth leaders. I just pray for these youth pastors, youth directors. Lord, anyone who's going to be giving these lessons, Lord, I just pray that you calm their hearts, you calm their minds. If there's areas that they need to work through, Lord, I just pray that you help them to do so.
Yes, Lord.
And Lord, I just pray that you help them and give them the wisdom to be able to address any of the horrifying things that our students are going to say in the midst of this lesson. And Lord, I just pray that you help them provide a safe space so they can say it. It can be brought into the light. And Lord, I pray for the students, that the students see that your word can infiltrate every part of their life and help them for success, even in the area of finding that significant other. I just pray the students see the value in that. And in your precious name, amen.
Amen. All right, everybody. Well, we hope this was helpful for you, edifying, encouraging, and prepared you to use this series well. That's our goal. That's our aim. We love you. We're grateful for you. We're grateful for the work that you do. It's needed. Stay in it. Keep fighting. And we'll keep fighting too. Peace.
See you later.